Hello, boxing fans, and welcome to another news update. I'm Kurt Ward. I'm joined by Alex Murray, Adam Smith, Two Pauls, McAllister, and Webb, and we're going to be discussing the return of Miguel Cotto and it pains me to say, his lineal middleweight title. He's going to be fighting Daniel Geale on June the 6th at the Barclays Center in New York, and I mean, on paper, that I think that's a decent fight for Cotto. To be honest, I mean, there was talk of him fighting Bundridge, which was just vomit. But then we find out that it's going to be a catch weight of 157, and it's just another. It's one of those where you just think, if you're not a middleweight, just dump the belt and go back down to 154. But obviously, he's holding this belt hostage for a while, it seems. And I mean, he's fighting Daniel Geale. I mean, it does seem a bit funny when you got Cotto and Roach over the past few months saying that they're not going to fight Golovkin because Golovkin doesn't bring anything to the table. He's not, they don't fear him or anything. And they're fighting someone who was made a good boy by Golovkin in, was it 3 rounds? Pretty easily. Alex, I'll come to you first. I mean, do you think this is a good fight despite the catch weight?
If there was no catchweight, I actually thought this was a good fight because it's the fact that Cotto was actually fighting a middleweight, and a lot of us thought that he would either be fighting, Tim Bradley or Bundridge or someone else that's
I mean,
not a
Khan was
middleweight.
mentioned as well.
Yeah, Khan, and some. I mean, when we spoke to Lou DiBella, he was having a go at us for suggesting, fighting welterweights and junior middleweights, and you can understand that people want to see Cotto fight a middleweight, and no one really expected him to actually choose a middleweight, nor you know never mind the fact that a decent middleweight, a middleweight with some sort of pedigree. And Daniel Gill has got that. Yeah, I mean, Gill got absolutely demolished by Golovkin, but he's still arguably one top 10 middleweight in the world. But then you just see this catch weight. Then you see this ridiculous 157-pound limit on a man who has been a middleweight for pretty much his entire career. I looked over Gill's box rec a few hours ago, and I think he's only fought junior middleweight perhaps about 8 years ago now, 8 or 9 years ago now, very early in his career, and he's barely ever been under sort of 159 pounds. And I don't particularly think that he's a big middleweight. I don't think that he struggles with the weight. Perhaps we've never really ever heard stories like that, but. It's going to be a tough ask, I think, and you've got to think that Cotter's only doing this just to weaken him. He's doing it to basically be a bitch about it, and this is what Cotto's become over the past few years. Everyone liked Cotto back in the day, back in 2007, 2008, 2009. Everyone loved watching him. He was a great fighter, banging people out, really just digging in, and amazing fighter to watch. But he's become a colossal arsehole now, and I can't stand watching him. I can't stand hearing about the politics behind his fights and his new diva attitudes. I think he's an absolute prick, and I really, really hope Gil smashes him.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of fans feel like that. There's some people who haven't liked him for a while. He's one of those guys that he always makes excuses for his losses, which, some fighters do. Also, when he lost to Austin Trout, I mean, he didn't agree with his decision. I don't see how it was. I think it was clear that he lost to Austin Trout. He refused to do an interview, he walked out, and the crowd, seemed pretty unhappy with him. It's just that, I remember when he fought Sergio Martinez, and Martinez was saying, that the fight was held up because he had to agree to all these silly little demands that Cotto had to come out second, he had to be introduced second, he had to have his name first on the fight poster, just little silly things like that. Even though Martinez was obviously the champion, it just seems because he's the A side, he uses that to his fully to his advantage, which some people would say fair enough. But again, I said off air, no matter how good he looks against Daniel Geale, he's surely going to still be not given the credit really, because people are just going to say, well, Geale wasn't allowed to weigh what he wants to, even though he's agreed to this weight. We know why he's agreed because obviously he's been given the chance of a massive fight, which obviously he'll probably agree to a lot of stupid things to try and get this fight. Paul McAllister, the other middleweight who was looked like was mentioned and rumoured to be in this fight was Highland. Now, he's a bit younger than Daniel Green. He's coming off a pretty solid performance against a faded Matthew Macklin. Would you rather have seen him in there with Cotto, or are you happy with Geale?
Um, I'm the same as Alex in the sense that I think this fight wouldn't be bad if it wasn't at a stupid catch weight. If this was just at the full 160, then I wouldn't mind it so much because I know Geale's coming off that very bad loss to Golovkin a couple of months ago now. I think it was late last year. Well, I personally think Geale's an underrated fighter. I mean, okay, he's not elite, he's not a world beater, but he's still a good, solid top 10, maybe top 5 middleweight for me. He's held a few world titles, he's beat a few names, he's beat Felix Sturm in Germany. Like I said, I think Geale's a good fighter, but it's Cotto again, having fights that defended his middleweight title when he's not even fighting at the middleweight limit. He's got to drain his fighters down. He's got to put in all these stupid little. Um, he just wants everything in his favour, and it's as you've said now, his popularity with hardcore boxing fans has just gone down the toilets because he's acted like such a diva and such a bitch over the last few years, and I'm definitely not as much as a fan as I was before. And I was a big fan. I was one of the very few people who was rooting for him against Sergio Martinez, but now I can't root for him anymore now because I've just had it with his behaviour.
If you remember as well, this was a man who actually whined after the Pacquiao dropping because that was actually a catch weight. He actually complained afterwards that the weight
Yeah,
he couldn't compete to the highest of his ability because of the 145
yeah,
catch weight. And he's gone on to do these. What the Martinez fight was at a stupid 159 catch weight. If you remember the Margarito rematch, he actually wanted that at 150. Margarito couldn't pay it and couldn't make it and refused to do it because they wanted that fight and needed it. It was big, obviously a massive fight because of the what went on in the first fight. They actually agreed to a 153-pound catch weight. Again, it's just all these little things just to stamp his authority as the A side. It seems. I mean, Adam, where are you on this fight? Do you think it's a good fight, or do you think he should just move down and just look for a Canelo, or what?
Well, I agree with Paul and Alex. It's not a bad fight on paper until you bring in the stupid catch weight. Um, he can make 154, obviously, and he could mix it down there. Cotto, he's possibly not at his prime, but a 90% of the Cotto of old could mix it with some of the guys down there. He's, certainly give the evergreen Bundridge a good fight. I can't keep up with the belt mess, but I think he owns one. Canelo's down the line somewhere as well. Very makeable fight. Not only am I sick of talking about the business people and what goes on behind the scenes and promoters, I'm sick to death of catchweights. And there's a lot of problems with boxing, TV deals, drugs, etc., etc., etc. But catchweights for genuine, well, is there a genuine world title left anymore? But for world titles, catchweights, it's easier. Just do away with them. Just do away with catchweights. Catchweights are, they're okay if if it's a fight, there's not many of them, but if it's a fight bigger than titles, or if you're just warming up, or or you're building up something, catch weights for world titles, just do away with them. It's ridiculous. I mean, you're making your own rules up as you go along. I mean, I just can't get my nut around it. Why would like someone like the WBC who in some people's eyes are seen as the leading like the green belt, etc., and they're letting people, Danny Garcia get away with it. They're letting Miguel Cotto get away with it. It just winds me up so much, and it's such a simple solution.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, I believe catchweights do have a place in the sport, but for only fights that can't be made otherwise, for fights that between two guys that are close in weight, but for whatever reason it's a bit difficult for either man to go up or down, and without the catchweight, the fight wouldn't get made, should I say? But when they're being used like this to visibly force a weakness onto an opponent that you couldn't be otherwise, or you can't be asked to train extra hard for, or to make it not as difficult, just like Cotto's doing against Geale, just like Mayweather did against Canelo, just like Pacquiao did against Cotto. It's embarrassing, and they shouldn't be in the sport. It's tantamount to cheating in my eyes, and it's
Yeah.
legal cheating, it's business cheating.
And Daniel Geale is not a puncher. I know I'm not gonna steal his point because it's a good point. Daniel Geale is not a puncher. So why do you need to bring him down
But
3 pounds?
I criticised HBO in another video we did with Stevenson and Kovalev, but like I say, I think they did a good job with Cotto though, because like I said, there was rumours that he wanted, to bring these welterweights up, or someone like K9 Brundage, and HBO apparently said no, And when they offered Geale or Highland, I think they accepted them only on the condition that his next fight will be on HBO in the fall, and it will be a big fight. Now, obviously, the big fight for him is Canelo, and the only reason they haven't announced that fight yet, should both of them win, obviously, is because, I mean, according to Dan Rayfield, is because they don't know whether the winner of Mayweather Pacquiao will want to go on the September date, which they usually do. If not, then it looks like Canelo Cotto will happen in September, which that's a great fight. And
But if that's got catch weight written all over it.
well, it just depends where. I mean, will Cotto say he can't make that weight? You'd expect him to. He'll try and get an advantage in that fight, I'd imagine.
It's just not good enough, is it? At the end of the day.
This is the fight that we want to see, isn't it? We want to see the Canelo fight, ideally, for Cotto, but we don't really want to see the Canelo fight at a stupid catchweight for a middleweight title. If it's going to be for the middleweight title, have it at 160. Yeah, Cotto's not a 160 fighter, but he shouldn't be parading around acting like he is.
It just feels like Cotto, he's hanging around for that one mega payday, isn't he? Whether it be a Mayweather rematch, a Pacquiao rematch, a Canelo fight, and he's worried about obviously losing. So I mean, with Canelo, he's going in against someone like James Kirkland, which even though he's heavily favoured, that's still a dangerous fight. Geale I agree, in the middleweight era today, he is a top middleweight, but I don't see that he's going to be that threat there. Paul, we haven't come to you yet, but what do you make of this fight, and what do you see happening in it?
I mean, I'm not a massive fan of the fight. I'm not as high on Geale as a lot. I think he's a top 10 middleweight by default. That the middleweight division isn't particularly strong at the moment. Once you get past the top 2 or 3, I think if you compare it to Highland, younger, coming off a big win, Geale, older, coming off a horrible loss. He looked as a lot. I mean, there's no disgrace in losing to Golovkin, but he just wasn't even there. He wasn't in the fight in any way, and he's been beaten by Barker. I think there were better options they could have got. And in terms of the catchweight, we talked the other day about Peter Quillen, and I mean, I'm a big believer that if a fighter can't make a weight, there's nothing wrong with that. Move up your division or move down your division. If Cotto can't make 160 pounds and feel that he'll be strong fighting there, or he feels he can do it in a fair way, there's no problem with that. Go down to 154. And dragging fighters down to 157 is just stupid. What they should do is have the fight at 160. Cotto doesn't have to weigh in at 160. Cotto can come weigh in at 154, 155. But it's a level playing field then. Pacquiao, when Pacquiao was fighting when he moved to light middle to fight Margarito, he didn't walk in at the light middleweight limit, but he gave Margarito the chance to do so if he wanted to. I just think that Cotto, I mean, the problem is Cotto is a massive name. If you take away Mayweather Pacquiao, he's earned the most money. He's been in pay-per-views. He's been in massive fights. And you can tell that he is angling to get that one big fight. It looks like Canelo is going to be the one he's going for. But a routine defence at 157 against a middleweight who's not done anything in a while, I don't really see much value in it.
I know there's the HBO want to put Canelo in with Cotto. They both got fights before then, obviously, but for whatever reason, when we've talked about other fights now happening, this is boxing. I mean, the big fights, the fights we want to see, it's a shock when they actually do get made and actually go ahead. For whatever reason, if that fight doesn't happen, I mean, who can Cotto realistically face? I mean, obviously people want to see the Golovkin fight, but that's not going to be realistic, is it?
Well, you can try and think of any genuine reason why Canelo Cotto can't be made. They're both similar weight class. They're both fight. Well, Cotto's a free agent. Canelo's on HBO. That fight's pay-per-view. There's no excuse on earth why they can't make that.
Cotto's with Jay-Z,
Yeah, I mean, he's with Rock Nation, so he's not a free agent, but I mean, in terms of he doesn't have a TV deal necessarily. So there's no reason on earth why they can't make that fight. The only reason they wouldn't is egos and money again, like everything else. But in the meantime, let's see Cotto fight properly at middleweight. You want to be classed as a middleweight world champion. He's the lineal guy, fight guys at 160, or give the belt back. The win against Martinez was great. He did really well to do it. He did a job on Martinez, depending on how shot you thought he was, but he did an absolute job on him. So give the belt back. You were still a middleweight champion. That's great. It goes on your legacy, but go fight at 154 again.
Yeah, it seems like he's just after that. I mean, I can see why Canelo, to me, I mean, I think Canelo at this stage of their careers, has just got too much for someone like Cotto. To be honest, I think since he left welterweight, I think his career has been managed pretty well. I'd say. I mean, he put up a good display against Mayweather. I thought he lost comfortably, but I think he acquitted himself well in that fight. But apart from that, I think he's been managed quite well. The Martinez fight is obviously, we've talked about it on the podcast before. I think that was a very well. Um, they fought Martinez at the right time. Let's just say that. And Canelo, I think they know that Cotto, obviously, he's had a great career. I mean, 140, 147, he's a great fighter to watch as well, but he's had a hard career as well. He's been in, some tough fights, and you can see why the Canelo and his team would want that fight. Cotto,
I'm not sure how Cotto's managed to turn himself into a PR disaster because everyone loved watching him. He took on the best opponents in the world. He got wronged in the Margarito first fight. Everyone wanted him to destroy Margarito in the rematch. I don't get how he's messed it up. So now people think he's just a whingy diva. It's strange how he's managed to do it in a couple of years.
well, yeah, and you got, I mean, people now wanting Daniel Geale to beat him, and should Daniel Geale beat him, I mean, yeah, the Canelo fight probably still happens, but it obviously takes a lot of shine off it, and it gives a lot of power to Canelo in the negotiations, which obviously Cotto we know won't take kindly to.
No, and I hope Geale does win for the point that Daniel Geale is a legit middleweight. But you can also, Geale had to take it because he needed a big fight. But if fighters refused to do catch weights, we wouldn't have this problem. Geale, they've gone right. We're going to give you this much money to fight him, but you've got to fight at 157. Now he could have turned around and said, "No, I'm not going to do it," and then he'd lose the fight. But he's willing to come into that. So Daniel Geale, after the fight, if he loses, cannot come out and say, "Oh, I was weight drained." I won't accept it
It's
because he agreed. He could have walked it and not taken the money. An excuse for this loss, if it is a loss, cannot be, well, I had to come in at 157 because he's agreed to that.
Yeah, it's like fighters who, when they're facing an A side and there's the A side comes in either way, a bit like someone like Bryna, for instance, and they just got no intention of making away. The other guy's got the option of walking away, but usually, obviously he's not in the same position as the other guy, and he needs he needs the exposure, the payday, and the chance. And I think Gill's the same. So yeah, he has to bend to Cotto. He has to, bend to what Cotto wants. And I mean, I'll go to you all. I mean, how do you see the fight playing out? I mean, does Geale have a realistic chance to you all?
Not with a catch weight. He would have done if it was at his weight and Cotto wasn't such a bitch. But the reason why he's asked for the catch weight is because it's going to ruin Geale and it's going to make him look stupid. He's going to struggle, and I think Cotto will have his way with him.
I think it will go. Yeah. It will go the distance, but Cotto will come out on top.
Geale's a mover, and Cotto's had trouble against movers, like we saw against Austin Trout. But as we said, he's going to come in weight trained. Any fighter who relies on a high work rate, you can't expect them to put in a high work rate when the weight trains, especially when it's like £3, because every pound counts when you're comfortably at the weight. So I think Cotto. Yeah, go on.
Sorry to interrupt. For me, I just don't think that Geale is good enough technically to outclass him. It's not like a Trout or a Mayweather. I think he doesn't have huge power, so he's not going to hurt Cotto easily, and he's not a very technical fighter, so he's not going to outclass him. I don't see, and he's not like he's huge either. I don't see an obvious way that Geale wins, even at 160. I don't see an obvious way because I just think style-wise, they've picked this very carefully. They've picked this as a fight for Cotto to definitely win, so they can make a big fight next. And you have to respect their careful pick.
Yeah, and it's clever matchmaking because it's people can accept it as well. They say, "Oh, well, fair enough, Geale. He's been on HBO a couple of times. We know he's a legit middleweight." But from their side, they know. He lost to Darren Barker, and all respect to Darren Barker, but I didn't really rate him that highly, and he lost to him. So I just think either way, I think Cotto should, even though he's faded, and I think the Martinez fight has made him look a lot better than what he is currently. I think he should still have too much for a Geale, but I think we'll see where Cotto is at when he faces someone like Canelo, in my opinion.
I mean, sorry.
Because I think it's a really good fight. I think potentially whether you can class it as a proper middleweight world title fight or not, I think it stands to be quite a good fight. If the Cotto in the first couple of rounds against Martinez comes out looking to bang him over, I think it could be really good. Cotto is not in bad fights. It's very rare he's in a poor fight. He even managed to make a fight with Mayweather quite exciting, which is a challenge in itself. So like I said,
Did
I
you
want
not see
him to
the
win.
Foreman fight? The Mayorga fight?
Not everyone's been. Again, it relies on who he's with. The Foreman fight wasn't great, but that was because Yuri Foreman was Yuri Foreman. I don't think Mayorga. Yeah, he's not been in every fight's been a classic. There isn't a single fighter alive that every fight you think that's been really good, but he can be exciting, and he is. But it's like the Amir Khan thing. He's good, but he's vulnerable, and that's the best sort of fighter to watch.
And he's certainly more aggressive under Freddie Roach as well, isn't he? I mean, he's 2 fights with Roach. Was it Dalvin Rodriguez and obviously Martinez? He's looking to throw the hook more as well that he seemed to have lost over the years, and he's definitely looking to hurt the opponents more instead of like boxing. So I do think it can be a fun fight because Geale will be right in front of him, I imagine, as the fight goes on.
Last point on the weights. When I used to see catch weight, 1 and 2 pounds, I thought, that's dead easy. You can shit that out. But really, the last couple of weeks, I've watched a couple of things. I watched the HBO 2 days on Terence Crawford. Now, I know that's a different story because he was genuinely struggling at the weight. But to get even when you get that close to the weight, and as Kurt said, Geale's been middleweight for years and years. Even when you get, he'll be. Cut him right down to make 160, and it would have been doing for all these recent fights, and then going another £3. It's just going to the well when it's already empty, kind of thing.
It's like when with these catch fights, I always remember a quote from Chris Eubank. I think it was in his book. This was years ago. He said, he's quite a big guy. He used to actually had to lose like 20-25 pounds to make middleweight. And he said those £20 were easy. He lost them no problem. It was always those last £2-3 that took it out of him, and he really had to drain himself to lose them. And to us, if you look at a catch weight, it's only £2 under his weight. What's the problem? But you don't know how much these guys are losing in weight. I mean, not all of them are like Mayweather or a Carl Froch who don't usually go up much. Some of them are putting on a huge amount of weight, or they're just naturally big guys who drain down. I mean, Joe Calzaghe walked around at 14 stone. He had to, obviously, his whole career drain himself down to 168. So
it's like pointless draining down because you think that what is the point of doing it? You should fight in the. They do it for obvious reasons. They want to be in a certain weight class. They have to lose those extra pounds, but fight where you're comfortable. It seems like an obvious one, really. You fight where you feel you can perform your best. Miguel Cotto, is the exception because we're talking about someone going up. If you're Daniel Geale, where are you going to fight your best? 160, at a push 168. You're not going to fight your best going the other way. And any fighter that gives up this weight issue of saying, I can lose a 2 or I can lose £3, you see 80% of fighters on a weigh-in, they look like crap. They look drained, they've not had anything to drink for 12 hours, they look awful. And there's only a few fighters that make weight every time so comfortable that you think it's not going to have an adverse effect on how they are in the ring. Like you say, Froch is one of those guys, whereas others, you see it like you saw Groves on the way in, and he looked like crap because he doesn't make it as easily as people like Froch did.
I think the way I explained it to a lad at work the other week was that basically, you think you're physically fit at the minute, take a stone off, and that would be your fighting weight if you start boxing next week. Or next month or whatever. Like people, it's hard to comprehend. Like I keep fit, but I've never tried to make a boxing weight like that. It's hard to comprehend that that's how far down they really do go.
Well, it's about getting every advantage. It's about getting every advantage, though, isn't it? I mean, every pound counts on the fight night. If you weigh a few more pounds than your opponent, then your punches are going to hit harder. It's as simple as that. And you say, the struggle's worth it in the end for them because it does matter. If you've seen some of these guys that end up weighing a stone more than other guys, or they put on 20 pounds. I think, who was it last weekend who put on, wasn't it Peterson? Peterson put on like 20 pounds or something ridiculous. And it matters, and he felt good for it. It's not as if and
he was already £3 over.
Well, that's it. I mean, he wasn't looking like bloated or anything in the ring. He looked fucking fit as a
It's,
fiddle in there.
it's like
Well,
some
that
fighters
adds to
will
the
use the
question.
weight,
So
won't
how?
they?
That
Sorry.
adds the question. Well, how much will if Geale can make 157 and he can do it without wrecking himself? When he comes into the ring, if I'm any middleweight coming up against Miguel Cotto, I want to walk in the ring 170 plus because you're going to beat him if you can maintain your fitness at that higher weight. If he fought a whole raft of middleweights out there, that'd be the first thing I do. I want to outweigh Cotto by 15 pounds because Cotto is not going to walk in the ring in the late 160s because it just totally wreck him as a fighter. So if Geale can make the weight properly, or if this goes for any middleweight actually who fights Miguel Cotto, if you can make the catch weight properly and then rehydrate and put on the extra pounds and do it in a way that doesn't ruin yourself, you're laughing. I think you really are.
But that's why he's got the catch weight, so that he can't do that properly. He's gonna burn himself off too much that even with rehydrated weight, he's not going to feel fine. He's not going to feel good. And it wouldn't surprise me if Cotto sticks on a rehydration limit as well.
Yeah, like I say, it's just a shame because I think Cotto would beat him at 160, and at 160, I think you can say it's a fair fight, and Geale got no issue with the fight. Even though we want to see Golovkin get his chance against, as the lineal guy, even though most probably class him as the number one, to actually confirm it. We know we're not going to see that fight. We know we're not going to get it. We can understand it, And if Cotto goes down and fights Canelo, I think everyone's fine with that. But at 160 at Geale, I don't think no one's got a problem with that, to be honest. But it's just these little, bitchy things that he has to put in, and it just takes the guts of it. Like I said, he beats Geale at 160. No one's got a fair enough, but he's going to beat him now, and there's going to be constant. Well, that doesn't prove nothing to us because you had to drain him to do it. So it's just for those £3, I think we won't know until fight night. But no matter what happens, if Geale loses, that's going to be the excuse. I mean, we saw Chad Dawson against Andre Ward. They always say they can make the weight. They always say they've had the best training camp in the world. But once they lose, and especially if they've put up a really pitiful effort as well, then that's going to be the first thing that's going to be used. So I'd like to thank Alex Morris, Adam Smith, Paul McAllister, and Paul Webb. I've been your host, Kurt Warder. Please keep subscribing and keep commenting, and we'll keep producing these award-winning videos. Thanks.